All right, so get this. We're diving into, well, a pretty bizarre boxing match. Jake Paul, the YouTuber, him beat Mike Tyson, Iron Mike, in a pro match. Like, for real. I mean, it sounds like we've gone back in time or something.
Yeah, you think so, right?
Then we've got this news article that breaks it all down, like blow by blow, and then there's the Wikipedia page, for all the background, the juicy details. It's wild.
It really is wild. It's actually almost unbelievable when you start looking at the facts. Like, we're talking a 31-year age difference between these two guys.
31 years, wow.
Which is like the biggest age gap ever in professional boxing history.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you immediately start questioning, is this even fair? Is this a fair fight?
Right, exactly. Like, what would make Mike Tyson even want to get in the ring? I mean, he's 58 at this point. With someone young enough to be, well, almost be his son.
Right.
And speaking of Iron Mike,
yeah,
the article describes his entrance at AT&T Stadium, decked out in the Iron Mike jacket, crowd going wild. It's a classic boxing spectacle.
It is, but, appearances can be deceiving when you dig a little deeper. Like, the Wikipedia entry talks about how Tyson's been dealing with some serious health issues.
Oh, really? Like what?
Stomach ulcer. He's got sciatica really bad. I mean, the guy needed a wheelchair just 2 years ago.
No way.
Yeah. So this wasn't your typical comeback story. This was a huge risk for him to even step into the ring.
And the article doesn't hold back on how he actually looked in the ring either. It wasn't the knockout machine we all remember. Not even close. I mean, reading it, you can't help but wonder, did the spectacle kind of overshadow the reality of his condition?
Oh, for sure. And the way the article describes his movements, too, like struggling to close the distance on Paul, getting hit by punches that were so telegraphed. I mean, you could see them coming from a mile away. It just shows you his reflexes, his speed just weren't there anymore.
It's sad to see.
Yeah, it's a completely different Tyson than the one we grew up with.
And talk about the crowd.
Yeah.
They were hyped at first, of course, but as the fight went on, you could feel this wave of disappointment just wash over the stadium, booing people leaving early. It's like they were watching a legend fade right in front of their eyes.
Right. And you know what really highlights the difference is the undercard fight. Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
The article praises that fight as like true elite boxing.
For like a real boxing match.
Exactly. So you can't help but think, did this main event, the Tyson-Paul fight, did it even deliver as an actual sporting competition?
That's a good question.
Right.
There's this one moment before the fight where Tyson's being interviewed by, get this, a 14-year-old social media star.
You're kidding?
Nope. And the article describes him as like detached, almost, downplaying his own legacy, dismissing the fight itself. It's like he's totally disillusioned with the whole thing.
Well, and to add to that, Wikipedia mentions that Jake Paul walked away from this fight with a cool $40 million.
$40 million? Seriously?
Yeah. So it makes you wonder about the motivation behind it all, right?
Oh, yeah. The money is talking loud and clear.
Big time.
Yeah.
Like, was the fight even the point at this point? It was more about the spectacle, the media frenzy around it.
Right. Speaking of media frenzy, Wikipedia goes deep on the whole media buildup. Press conferences, a full-blown Netflix documentary series. I mean, they really milked this thing.
They knew what they were doing. It was entertainment, first boxing match, second.
For sure. Which makes you wonder, are we like blurring the lines between sport and entertainment too much these days?
It's a valid question. Like, at what point does it stop being about athletic achievement and become something else entirely?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope for sure.
Definitely. And then there's the elephant in the room. The whole controversy surrounding this fight.
Oh, yeah, we can't ignore that.
Wikipedia doesn't shy away from it either. The age difference, the ethics of it all. And then there's Jake Paul's, well, let's just say his behavior was questionable.
Yeah, during the weigh-in, he does this whole knuckle-walking thing.
Right. Like he's imitating a gorilla or a chimp. Not a good look.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And this is where Wikipedia provides some important context.
Exactly, because historically comparing black people to primates has been a tactic used to dehumanize them,
Right.
to justify their oppression. So it's deeply offensive regardless of intent.
And the backlash was intense.
Yeah.
Sean Strickland, the UFC fighter, he straight up called the fight illegal.
Wow.
And KSI, another YouTuber turned boxer, labeled it elderly abuse. Those are some serious accusations coming from within the fighting world.
Yeah, it shows you the level of disapproval and the ethical concerns surrounding this whole spectacle. This wasn't just another fight, it became a symbol of something much bigger.
So we have this supposed comeback fight for Mike Tyson, this clash of generations. But what does it actually say about boxing today? Did this fight tarnish the legacy of a legend?
That's the million-dollar question right there. What does it tell us about the motivations behind these types of events? And are we as fans complicit in this whole thing?
Yeah, that's getting pretty deep.
It is. It makes you wonder if we've lost sight of what boxing is supposed to be about. For sure, this is an ancient ruse. We don't throw gladiators in the arena just for the spectacle of it.
Or do we?
Right. I mean, think about the rise of these YouTuber boxing matches, the constant push for bigger, more outlandish events. It's like we're craving the spectacle more than the sport itself.
And what about the media's role in all of this?
Yeah.
They were hyping this fight up for months.
Oh, the media is totally complicit. They played right into it, feeding the frenzy, creating this narrative of the aging legend versus the young upstart. They knew what would sell, what would get clicks and views. It's a cycle, really.
So where does that leave us? As fans, are we contributing to the problem? Are we part of the machine?
That's the question, isn't it? We have a responsibility to be more discerning, to think critically about the events we support, the fighters we cheer for. Are we rewarding athleticism and skill, or are we just rubbernecking at a spectacle?
So this whole thing is a lot more complex than just Jake Paul beating Mike Tyson. It's about the state of boxing, the role of the media, and our own complicity as fans. Is there anything else from the sources that we need to unpack before we wrap up this deep dive?
You know, there's one detail mentioned in the Wikipedia entry that I found particularly interesting. It didn't get a lot of media attention at the time, but I think it speaks volumes about the whole situation.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Let's save that juicy tidbit for part 2.
Well, according to the article, the fight itself was almost like watching a slow-motion train wreck.
Oh, wow.
Tyson came out swinging in the first round, even landed a few good hits, but then...
Yeah, it's like that initial burst of energy just completely drained him.
Yeah.
The article describes him as weathered, aged. I mean, it's almost painful to read considering how dominant he used to be.
Yeah, and there's this one moment in the second round that the article really zooms in on where Paul connects with like a series of left hooks, and it points out that, the old Tyson in his prime, he would have dodged those
Oh,
easily.
totally. Too quick.
Yep. Right. Those were telegraphed punches. Like a beginner could have seen them coming.
So basic.
Yeah, it's like that one moment just summed up the whole fight. A legend past his prime, struggling to keep up with a younger, faster opponent. It's kind of sad.
You mentioned earlier that some people might have felt uncomfortable watching this. Did the article kind of touch on that at all?
Definitely. I mean, think about it. The article points out that Paul was practically cruising through those later rounds.
Like it was a walk in the park.
Exactly, and that's what raises those ethical questions, right? Was Tyson really in any condition to be in that ring? Or was this all just about the spectacle, the money?
Right, exploitation almost.
Yeah, and what about the crowd? We talked about how their energy shifted. Did the article go into more detail about that?
Yeah, what else did it say?
Well, it talks about how, as the fight went on, this muted, almost resigned atmosphere fell over the stadium. People were booing. Some were even heading for the exits before it was even over.
Wow, really?
Yeah, these are boxing fans. They know what a good fight looks like. And this just wasn't it.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like going to a magic show, and suddenly you see the strings holding up the illusion. The crowd came in expecting to see Iron Mike the Legend, and instead they got, well, something much sadder.
That's a perfect analogy. And the article drives that point home even further by contrasting the Tyson-Paul fight with that Taylor-Serrano fight, the one that everybody was calling a true display of boxing skill.
Right, the undercard fight.
Exactly. It's like a slap in the face almost, reminding you what you didn't get from the main event.
Ouch.
Right.
So we've got a fighter past his prime, a younger opponent who's clearly in it for the money and the clout. A disillusioned crowd. What are we supposed to take away from all of this?
I think it forces us to look at some uncomfortable truths about the business of combat sports, Is entertainment and profit being put ahead of the safety and well-being of the fighters?
That's a good question.
It's not just about Tyson either. This fight feels like a symptom of a much larger issue.
Yeah, you're right. It makes you wonder if we've kind of lost sight of what boxing is supposed to be about.
Exactly. Like, this isn't ancient Rome. We don't throw gladiators into the arena just for the spectacle of it.
Or do we, think about the rise of these YouTuber boxing matches. The constant push for bigger, more outlandish events. It's like we're addicted to the spectacle more than the sport itself.
Right. And the media plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They were hyping up this fight for months.
They were totally complicit, feeding the frenzy, creating this whole narrative of the aging legend versus the young upstart. They knew what would sell, what would get the clicks and the views. It's a vicious cycle.
So where does that leave us? As fans, are we part of the problem? Are we contributing to this whole mess?
That's the tough question we have to ask ourselves. We have a responsibility to be more critical, to think about the events we support, the fighters we cheer for. Are we rewarding athleticism and skill, or are we just rubbernecking at a spectacle?
Those are some heavy questions.
They are. And I think that's what makes this whole Tyson-Paul fight so fascinating. As strange as it seemed on the surface, it's really a microcosm of so many issues that are plaguing not just boxing, but the entertainment industry as a whole.
We've got these larger-than-life personalities, driven by fame and fortune, often at the expense of integrity and respect for the sport. We've got the media hyping it all up, blurring the lines between reality and spectacle. And then there's us, the audience, trying to figure out what to believe, who to root for, and what it all means.
And that's the challenge we're left with. How do we navigate this world of entertainment where the lines are so blurred and the motivations are often questionable?
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
what's the final takeaway? What should our listeners be thinking about as they process all of this?
I think the most important thing is to be aware, to be critical consumers of the media we consume and the events we support, to question the narratives that are presented to us and really think about the motivations of those involved. Because at the end of the day, it's our attention, our viewership, our dollars that fuel this whole machine, and we have the power to choose what we support and what we reject.
Well said. This whole Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight, as bizarre as it was, has given us a lot to think about. It's a reminder that the world of sports and entertainment is a complex one, and we need to be engaged, informed, and critical in order to navigate it effectively.
All right, so you were saying there was this detail from the Wikipedia page that really caught your eye, something that didn't get a lot of attention at the time.
Yeah, it happened at the final press conference, a couple days before the fight.
Okay, yeah, I think I vaguely remember something about, like, confrontation or something.
Right, it got a little bit of media coverage, but the full implications weren't really explored. So basically, during the face-off, you know when the fighters are standing nose to nose?
Paul accidentally stepped on Tyson's toes.
Ouch. Yeah, that happens. Yeah. Especially in those moments when everyone's kind of crammed together.
True, but here's the thing. Tyson has been really open about having chronic foot problems, partly from his sciatica. He's even said that, like, a slight touch can cause him excruciating pain.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that bad. So this wasn't just a minor inconvenience for him. It was like potentially a major issue.
Exactly. And his reaction was immediate. He slapped Paul across the face.
Oh, wow. Things escalated quickly.
Yeah, I mean, understandably so, given Tyson's pain and sensitivity. But here's where it gets really interesting. In an interview afterwards, Tyson claimed he believed Paul stepped on his toes on purpose.
Wait, seriously? He thinks Paul did it intentionally, knowing about his foot issues.
That's what Tyson suggested. He said something like, I wanted to believe it was an accident, but now I think it might have been deliberate.
That's already a big accusation.
It is. And it's something that I think deserves more attention. You know, makes you wonder about the whole situation, motivations behind it all. Was this just a publicity stunt gone wrong, or was there like a more calculated attempt to exploit Tyson's vulnerability?
And if that's true, it just adds another layer of complexity to this whole story.
Yeah.
We started out talking about this blurring of lines between sport and entertainment,
Yeah.
the role of the media, and now we're getting into the ethics of the fighters themselves.
And that's exactly it. This fight, as weird as it was, has become this microcosm of so many issues that are affecting not just boxing, but the whole entertainment industry.
It's like we had these larger-than-life personalities,
Yeah.
driven by fame and fortune, often at the expense of, well, integrity and respect for the sport itself. The media is hyping everything up, feeding the frenzy, blurring the lines between what's real and what's just spectacle. And then there's us, the audience caught in the middle, trying to make sense of it all.
Right. And that's the challenge we're faced with. How do we navigate this world of entertainment where the lines are so blurred and the motivations are often so murky?
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final takeaway? What should our listeners be thinking about?
I think the most important thing is to be aware, to be critical of what we see and hear, to question the stories that are being told, and to think about the motivations of everyone involved, because at the end of the day, it's our attention, our viewership, our money that fuels this whole machine, and we have a choice. We can choose what we support and what we don't.
That's a powerful message. This whole Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight, as strange as it was, has really given us a lot to think about. It's a reminder that the world of sports and entertainment, it's complicated, and we need to be engaged, informed, and critical if we want to understand it. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been a wild ride.